Surah Al-Fatiha, please. Before we begin, I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the IMAN Center, to the greater Seattle community, commemorating and together Saint Isa and this tragedy. Inshallah, any opportunities sure to collaborating with the center and you guys. Inshallah, you know, I've had fun with your questions and answers, and hopefully you guys have also benefited from my lectures and my Alwada from Madwan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بارئ الخلائق أجمعين. باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء سيد المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم إلى قيامة يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة. يا غريب كربلاء. يا أبا الشهداء. يا حسين يا أبا عبد الله. رزقنا الله في الدنيا زيارتكم وشفاعتكم في الدنيا وفي القبر وفي الآخرة. أما بعد، يقول الله في محكم كتابه وقرآنه المجيد وقوله الحق. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فلنسألن الذين أرسل إليهم ولنسألن المرسلين فلنقصن عليهم بعلم وما كنا غائبين. والوزن يومئذ الحق. فمن ثقلت موازينه فأولئك هم المفلحون. ومن خفت موازينه فأولئك الذين خسروا أنفسهم بما كانوا بآياتنا يظلمون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليكم. Inshallah, we will be concluding this series with our final lecture dealing with the Ma'ad. Tonight, inshallah, I would like to spend a couple of minutes very briefly on I was not able to speak on before Maqtal and Shami Ghariban, which was the objections that some have brought up with regards to a afterlife. Number one, I'm going to go through this very quickly because the actual topic of today is a little bit different. Number one, the objection is that there is no proof. Our answer to that is yes, there is definitely proof. In my notes, it says see above, but I'll actually say over here, see the previous lecture in this series, which will be night 10. The proofs don't necessarily have to be what you're used to, right? They don't have to be scientific proofs. However, there are definitely philosophical, logical proofs. And we looked at the outward and the inward proofs and looked at many ayat from the Quran. The second is this notion that keeps on coming back within the Quran. And many people, philosophers, as well as just secular people in general, they have this objection that how can the dead come back to life? What is this? That, when we're dust and, decaying in our graves, how in the world are we going to actually come? What is this? So what is our response to this? Number one, some prophets actually offered, okay, if we resurrect someone in front of you, will you then believe? What was the answer? One of the answers is in Surah Hud, ayah number 7. And I'll quickly just do the translation because we don't have time. They'll just say, هذا سحر مبين. This is such clear and clarifying magic that it explains everything else. What does it explain everything else? Meaning, you aren't really a prophet, you're a magician. You're just trying to pull the wool over our eyes. So this is their answer. If you even go and say to them, we'll go and bring back your forefathers right here and right now. No. This is just some magic trick. Second is a reply to their second type of question, which is, these decayed bodies, when we've all become dust and everything, how are we going to be put back together so nice? Right? And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses, for example, in Surah Al-Qiyamah. That no, actually, we're even able to go and put together his fingertips. Right? Even to the extent of the unique identifiers of your fingerprints, even that we can go and put you back together exactly how you were. But then we also go and say, look, you don't seem to have really a problem when it comes to Hollywood and zombie apocalypses. Then we don't want to go and ask the hard questions. Then it's okay. They can all just come out of the same graves that they were buried in, even though we know from science that the bodies don't last, more than a few weeks. They go pretty quickly, right? Unless you're, like a Ma'soom or something like that. And there's a story of a Mu'jiza of one of the companions of the Prophet. I remember, for example, the last seen prophet by human eyes, by modern times, was someone by the name, by the title, I should say, of Sahib al-Sir. This is a companion of the Prophet by the name of Hudayfa ibn Yaman. Hudayfa ibn Yaman is known as the companion of the secret because on one of the Prophet's expeditions in the final year of his life, there was an assassination attempt on Rasulullah. And, they were all Muslims around, so it was in the dark of the night, and Rasulullah is on his camel, and these hypocrites had tried to go and make a landslide happen and kill Rasulullah. Ammar ibn Yasir is behind the camel of Rasulullah, and Hudayfa is in front. Hudayfa is able to see up this kind of rock slide who exactly the faces are, right? Why? Because Rasulullah points at the sky and the sky lights up and all of their faces are able to be seen. Later on, some of them would even come and ask, are we on that list? Are we not, right? And, even though there isn't necessarily a agreed upon list, we find that list accidentally in one of the books of the other schools of thought by the name of a scholar, Ibn Hazm. And he goes and says, this is rejected hadith. How dare you go and put X, Y, and Z into the names of these hypocrites? And so we know exactly who was deleted from history. There were hadith that were corroborated. The second answer to this question of how can dust be put together nicely into working human beings is we ask the question, which one's harder? Creation ex nihilo, meaning creation from nothing, or to recreate from something that once upon a time used to be this. This is what the Quran also comes and says. The third objection, or actually we also come with another example. This one's from Surah Al-Nahl, ayah number 65. Allah Ta'ala gives this example in many places, but now Allah Ta'ala wants you to remember anytime that you see a tree growing or you see grass growing. He says, once upon a time, this used to be dead earth. This used to be something that did not have any vegetation on it. And I came and I revived this dead earth using the rain. Similarly, I will revive you using a special rain. This is in the Quran, this is in many of our hadith. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a rain, and this rain will, according to Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, it will go and put and push, right, our body parts and our particles and push them together until we become formed, and it'll push particles of other people away from the formation of our body and take them to wherever their graves are, right? And then we will all come out of our graves, as the Quran says, and then when the second trumpet is born, our souls, right, as Surah At-Takwir says, وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ. So, this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even gives us in terms of examples in creation that, look, this is something that I do all the time. I think I can't do it to you, I do it to my other creations. It's you so special that I can't do it to you. I created you in the first place first. But even then, other creations, I'm constantly reviving dead. Another objection is something that has been given by some philosophers. And they say that, look, once something is completely annihilated, what's there to bring back? It's been taken into fana. It has been completely eradicated from existence. So now they say, from a philosophical point of view, how can God bring this back from nothingness? Anything that he brings back will be a new creation. To give you an example, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, examples don't really do justice to Allah, but to help us understand, that's why I give this. I know that many of us here maybe work at Microsoft, and if you don't work at Microsoft, then you work at Boeing, and if you don't work at Boeing, then I don't know, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Maybe you're part of Meta, or maybe you're part of Google. You should join the dark side and come to. Anyway, I'm sorry, I forgot Amazon. We made almost a whole entire 15 minutes just dedicated to Bezos. But what do we say about Microsoft? We say that, look, if you have a Word document and you have a a good reminder for all of us to go for said that if you go and save a Word document, especially if it's one that you're cross-collaborating with another, then there's something called document history, right? There's revision history. That is something that even if you work at Google, also exists. You can go back and you can revisit previous drafts. What happens if you forget, like I once did in college, to press Control S? You forget to press save, and you can be writing 15 pages. If you close out of that document and your laptop comes back with the blue screen of death, what happens? And you say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, because that's this blue screen of death, right? And you have to go and completely rewrite everything, unless Microsoft has something that they didn't have back in the day when I was in college, in which case may Allah bless you and your parents. But you're a little bit too late, because you could have saved me a whole entire night, right? So now, if everything is annihilated, the only way for God to even bring something back, look, if you go and have a revision history, you can have 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.9, and then you can go and even with apps, you can go and release 2.0. But if you completely delete the app, you have to go back to 1.0. It's a completely new creation. So how can you go and take something into annihilation, into nothingness, and then bring it back? We say that, look, we agree that there, if there's no continuity in existence, then yeah, there has to be. But who said that there's a complete annihilation? We say that after the body is gone, the soul still exists. Even the body, we just said in our previous example, it goes and, look, this is even something that science goes and tells us, right? That matter is neither created nor destroyed. So if it's not really destroyed, it's just being spread around and repurposed, we don't really have a problem, do we? So this philosophical, objection, it doesn't really stand, much of a chance, really. The next one is going to be something that an atheist came and asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And he asks, this ayah number 56 of Surah An-Nisa, that every single time that they are punished in hellfire, they will get a new skin, and they will be made to feel it all over again. This atheist comes and says, what's the sin of this new skin? The old skin was there in dunya, and it did the sin. Why should this new skin be punished? And he's coming from this point of view that, look, Allah is just. He wouldn't punish something that didn't do the sin in the first place. So what's the answer? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says it is the same skin, but it is like the skin. The atheist is like, give me an example. I don't understand. So the Imam says, take a brick. You have a brick, and if you go and apply water and this and that and everything, eventually it can decompose into mud. But then if you go and put it back into the same mold and all that kind of stuff, you have a brick again. Is it the same brick? You haven't introduced anything, you haven't subtracted anything, you've just taken it back to its base components and you've rebuilt it back into the same exact thing. Is it the same thing? Or for example, maybe some of our youth, they like slime or putty, right? This toy that you find around your house, sorry parents, especially if you're at that age, if you go and rip it apart, you go and put it into 1,000 different pieces, and then you, again, sorry parents, you are the one who has to go and clean it up. It's not going to be your kids. When you go and put it back, is it the same putty? Yeah, of course it is. It's a little bit different, but metaphorically, it's technically still the same. So every single time, it's going to be the same exact skin according to Imam Jafar Sadiq. So that's that objection answer. The next one also comes from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. This one's narrated by Hisham ibn Hakam. He says that the atheist comes and he says that, look, at the end of the day, how is this God going to revive us? This is a little bit more complex than the previous one that we revisited, which was how is he going to put us back together so nice? This objection comes and says, look, this is known in Arabic as the problem of akil wal mat. That at the end of the day, this is what I was referring to the other day of Lion King, right? Eventually, we're going to go and become the grass. And this plant or whatever is going to be eaten by an animal. And we're going to go and eat that animal. And guess what? Taking to the logical, extremity, someone else is going to have bits and pieces, right? Atoms, molecules, particles, even let's say it amounts to a whole gram of me, 100, 200, 300 years later in their food, which then they eat. Now, maybe, because obviously, look, you don't need to be, older than a day on this world to know that food doesn't stay long within you. It gets excreted. But maybe, because we know now in modern science, that every 7 years, your body completely replenishes all of the cells in its body, and now you have a completely new body. But for a certain time, right before you die, your body is going to be made up to some trace amounts from other people. So this atheist comes and asks Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that. What's going to happen? He's going to go and take your, let's say, half a liver or something. He's going to give it to, Jafar over here. He's going to go and give this to Abdullah. He's going to give this to Zayd, and he's going to give this to Amr. But what's going on over here? How does this, resurrection work? So the Imam says that first and foremost, the answer that satisfied him was through his knowledge and power, he will be able to go and do. And there are two explanations to that ayah of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam asking the same question. Right? Let's have Allah salawat have another second. So what are the two explanations? The first one is the popular explanation of what happens with Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. It says, كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى? He says, أَوَلَمْ تُؤْمِنْ? Don't haven't believed? It says, I believe, but I can, so that I can have a little bit more, conviction in my heart. The first one comes and says, okay, take 4 birds, chop them up. This interpretation is the mashhur. It's not necessarily the one that I fully subscribe to, but I'll mention it. Chop them up and, put, let's say the wings on this mountain and put the feet on this mountain and put the heads on this mountain and put the bodies on this mountain. Then, just like how you train them, call them, and you'll see all of them coming together and they'll be reformed and they'll be sitting on your arm, right? These 4 birds. That's interpretation number 1. There's a few problems with this from the grammar. What's a better explanation from the grammar? This comes from one tafsir, and it comes actually before Fatih al-Ghaib from Fakhr Razi, and he mentions it and he compares it. And he's like, look, this is an extremely good argument, but there's just one final argument that puts it over the edge. And I think this first interpretation that I just shared is the actual one. What's the second interpretation? Second interpretation is this, that look, there are two major sons of Prophet Ibrahim, Ishaq and Ismail. Ishaq becomes the progenitor of the Jewish prophets, Israelite prophets, Bani Israel. Yaqub, Yusuf, all the way down through Musa to Isa alayhi salam. Isa alayhi salam, his final miracle, we mentioned this a couple of nights ago, when the Ma'idah is asked for, he says, ittaqillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even says that if you do get this, inni u'addibukum naran la u'addibu ahadan min al-'alamin. Why? Because when a physical miracle is shown, then the Hujjah is complete. Ibrahim is probably the one prophet who knows Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. That's and this is shown 2 ayahs before when he's debating with that king. He says, Rabbi, tuhi wa tumit. My Lord will go and give life and give death. So the king goes and sets one prisoner free. He kills the other prisoner. Says, okay, now I can do it. He moves on. He says, okay, fine. This is the understanding of Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum, Ayatul Kursi, from Ibrahim's perspective. Goes and just easily moves on to the next argument. Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum. You don't believe that he's hayyul qayyum? After that, ta'khudhuhu as-sinatu wa an-nawm. Lahu ma fi as-samawati wal ard. If you say that you're the Lord and everything is yours in the samawat and the ard, my Lord can go and make the sun come from the east and set in the west. Why don't you show me the opposite? And he can't. Ibrahim also knows death and life are on the hands of Allah because he just survived a fire a couple of decades ago. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kunu bardan wa salama. He also recently is trying to sacrifice Ismail and the knife won't work. So he knows definitely life and death are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet he goes and asks this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is right to go and question, Awalam tu'min? The first legacy of Prophet Ibrahim is this legacy that it seems not the Jewish prophets, not the Bani Israel prophets, but their people had. That we always want another miracle. And this is something in the Quran as well. They come to Rasulullah and they say, look, we won't accept any prophet until you make a sacrifice on an altar, that a fire from the sky comes and consumes the sacrifice, then we'll know that you're a true prophet. What does Rasulullah say? He says, prophets before me came, you didn't believe them. Why is my sacrifice given by fire going to be any different? So this is the first legacy. This is also what Prophet Isa was saying. You guys still haven't learned from all these prophets that you learned about in your Sunday schools and Saturday schools. You guys are still asking me for a physical miracle. So now comes Rasulullah from the line of Ismail. And this legacy of Prophet Ibrahim is take these 4 birds, train them, and then put each one, still living, on a mountain. Call them to you. Then you'll see. And the way how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the ayah is Wallahu Azizul Hakim. Very interesting way to end the ayah. Meaning there's some izzah in this ayah and there's some hikmah in this ayah. What's the izzah? The authority that just like how you established your authority over these small little birds, and I have pet birds. You train them well enough, they treat you just like how a young child treats their parent. They think that you're God. They think that you're the Nazir. So these birds will obey whatever command that you give them, as well as hikmah. I decided to show it through this, to teach you that just like how these birds, you only owned them for a couple of weeks, but they still obey your authority. These souls were with me before I ever put them into bodies. They're waiting to come back to me. They love being in my company. Once I say, Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya, they'll immediately fly back. If I go and tell this body, kun fayakun, be constructed all over again, I was the one who went and put the skies and earth together. Karhan aw taw'a. Fa'atayna ta'in. That we come to you willingly. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes and tells Ibrahim, you need to stop asking for physical miracles. You need to start using your intellect and arrive at my message intellectually. وَكَذَلِكَ نُرِيَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مَلَكُوتَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ موقنين. And this is how we showed him the mechanics behind the scenes of everything in creation. Now the tree will become an ayah. The grass will become an ayah, like I just pointed out to you. This is the legacy that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam continues of his grandfather Ibrahim, that you need to go and look for the signs in the everyday. All of these are miracles. So now, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the first way he goes and answers this atheist is through this. But Imam Sadiq is latif, he's subtle in the way he answers. This next objection is that, look, if we're going to go, this is a more recent one, that if we have so many different reiterations of our body, where every 7 years our body is renewed, then if you get to the age of 70, you're going to have 70 divided by 7 is 10. So you're going to need to have 10 bodies resurrected. So there's going to be 10 of you on Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is the objection. Why? Because if all of your cells are being put together, then we need 10 bodies. You're 70 years old. Or if you're 80 years old, so let's use something that's divisible by 7. Let's say 77. You need 11 bodies. Okay, so now what are we going to do with 11 bodies? Is one of them going to go into Jannah, each one, like, one at a time, or into Jahannam one at a time? But some philosophers, they came and said, no. If you have the equivalent of 10 bodies, you will be raised up 10 times your size. And your arm will be 10 times the length of your current arm. Or your head will be 10 times the... Why? So that we can fit everything into one. And then each punishment will come and affect just the part that actually went and did this sin. They say that, look, all that we need is the actual cells that were there at the time of your death. Okay? Why? Because at the end of the day, you are still the person, even if you don't have the same cells, you're still the same person, right? Even if because it's not that like you're being annihilated. There's a continuity. And the proof of this, very simply, brothers and sisters, this could go on forever, but we have other topics that we need to discuss. Go to court and try this out. Your Honor, look, the prosecution took too long to go and bring me to justice. I'm no longer the same body. It was 8 years ago. It was 7 years ago. So you can't even punish me today. You have to let me go. The judge will go and say to you, are you crazy? Maybe your lawyer should go and enter a plea of insanity for you, but definitely not this plea. Point is that you are still you, and so we can go and bring you back. And at the end of the day, the skin is just a tool. The skin, this body that is being resurrected, because look, body parts will be asked to go and testify against you. So we have clues in the Quran that this is a bodily resurrection, not just a spiritual one, but the punishment and the reward. Of course, the highest forms of them are spiritual. But the body is also a component of that reward, of that punishment. And that is also something that your soul latches onto. They are now attached once again to this body, and they will have pain receptors and all of this kind of stuff, right? And this is why the skin is also being renewed. Question. We're going to have these same bodies even in Jannah? Yes, but once we drink from Hawd al-Kawthar, that pond of Kawthar, now we have much more capacity, much more capability. We have a hadith where Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let's have another second louder salawat so that we can. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, in Jannah, each and every single Friday, now don't ask me what a Friday is in Jannah, I don't know how time works over there. Apparently in some of the hadith, we have seasons. Some of the hadith, we have Fridays. So there is some sort of timekeeping mechanism. But on every Friday, brothers and sisters, in Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us one of two things. What's the thing number one? Either He will increase us in His ma'rifah, meaning we will have more ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or number two, He will give us a new sense. Look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who invented all 5 of our senses. Using these 5 senses, you have the quality of life that you have. If you have color blindness, you have a degree less quality of life than someone who can see color. If someone is blind, then they have less quality of life than someone who can see. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, each and every single Friday, because Allah can invent however He wants, He will keep on enhancing your senses and give you new senses. This is something that we look forward to in Jannah to enhance the bodies that we already have. And so, brothers and sisters, it seems that the actual answer, we want to go and actually see the mechanics of how this works, is look, at the end of the day, within your body, at the time that you die, right, that body, that final body, there's only going to be a few trace amounts of other people that have actually integrated into your, blood, your flesh, your bones, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so no problem. If you, let's say, from all these people who are part of your body, say, I don't know, 60, 70% is you, and 30% is, and this is, really, really raising the percentage. 30% is from different people. Okay, Allah Ta'ala will go and take that 30% and put it back to Zayd, Amr, whoever, and you, now, maybe some of us will hear this and we'll get happy, will lose weight on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Skinnier. You started off at 200, there'll be 100 on that day because part of you was over there. But trust me, you won't care about your weight loss on that day because, as Surah Hajj says, you'll see people drunk almost of how terrible the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah are. So that, brothers and sisters, would be the objections to how exactly this resurrection is going to happen. So, inshallah, this is of help. But now, brothers and sisters, I want to turn your attention to the ayah that I started off my presentation with. Specifically, وَالْوَزْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْحَقِّ. Because this final presentation, I want to use it to help us and become galvanized, become motivated to really start working harder towards our akhirah. In that ayah, we said that wazan word, most of the mufassirin will say 99% of the mufassirin, whether they're Sunni or Shia, they have understood wal waznu yawma idhin al haq to mean the meaning of the weighing that day will be true. Here it is a masdar, it is an infinitive, meaning it is a concept, it's an idea. But an ism can also be an actual thing. It can be an actual object. So the wazn over here, according to three of our mufassirin, Sahib al-Mizan, as well as two of his students, Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli, as well as Ayatollah Muhammad Hussaini Tahrani, have agreed upon this definition of wazn. What is wazn over here? Wazn over here is a rubric or a standard. And here I would ask for your heightened attention. If nothing else in this presentation, I want you to pay close attention to over here. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Those of us who have been to the mother countries, Pakistan, India, Iraq, Iran, Tanzania, Zanzibar, these countries do their groceries a little bit differently than over here. Here, walk into Costco, you walk into Whole Foods, and there's weighing things for when you have your produce. Go and weigh it over here, or in Walmart, and you go in, weigh, and okay, you see that it's 1.2 pounds. Okay. Over there, back home, how do they weigh things? They have, let's say, 2 plates, and this is especially how it used to work back in the day. They used to have 2 plates. And this is that old concept of Lady Justice with the scales of justice, right? Those plates of justice. On one side, they will go and put a standard. They'll go and say, okay, how much rice do you want? How much potato do you want? How much tomato do you want? Well, 5 kilo? Okay, go and call the boy in the back, give me the 5 kilo. You're praying to Allah, inshallah, he's bringing the 5 kilo and not the 4 kilo less, and I have to pay more, inshallah. Goes and says, okay, yeah, this one says 5 kilo. He goes and puts it on one side. What does he do? Puts your rice on the other side and he starts filling it up. Once they're equal, you give the payment. He says, ma'as-salama, and you have a nice day. Okay? What's that thing called on the other side of the plate that's being measured against the rice? And once they're equal, that's when you know that you have 5 pounds, hopefully, 5 kilos. This is also called wazn. It's also called mawzun, the thing that is the standard of weighing. It doesn't necessarily just have to be the scales, also be the thing that is being weighed. So now, Allama Tabatabai comes and says, وَالْوَزْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْحَقِّ. The standard that day, the rubric by which everything will be compared against. You know, when teachers go and grade your exam, they have a master answer sheet, right? Like, okay, correct, incorrect, etc., right? That thing that day will be called haqq. So what does that mean? Because most of us have this idea that when I go to the scales, good deeds will be on one side and bad deeds will be on the other side. Okay. But our imams in the Quran tell us something differently. What did they say? One of our imams, for example, was asked, says, yes, there is a weighing, but not of good versus bad. It's of good and less good. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Sallu ala Muhammad wa good deeds have a weight based on a standard. And we'll look at the standard, inshallah, very soon. But bad deeds have no weight. So this presents a problem. In our understanding, if good deeds are on one side and bad deeds are on the other side, let's say you have someone like Yazid ibn Mu'awiyah, someone who we believe doesn't have any good deeds, he has all bad deeds. Hypothetically, put one deed of goodness on his side. He has 1 billion bad deeds, but according to these hadith, bad deeds are weightless. They have zero weight, not even 0.1 weight. If I go and say that I go and put 1,000 kilograms of feathers and I put 1,000 kilograms of lead, which one will be heavier? 1,000 kilograms is still equivalent to 1,000 kilograms. So they'll actually be equal. But if I put 1,000 units of nothing and I put one standard of anything over here, which one's obviously going to weigh? The good deed will always win. So khalas, Islam is the best religion. It's so merciful. Everyone's going to paradise. That's how it works. How do we understand this? If it's going to be good deeds versus less good deeds, Rasulullah is saying that they'll be weighed against a standard. See, look, just like how we put that rice and those potatoes and tomatoes against an actual weight, what's this weight? 5 kilograms, how is it being compared to anything? Scientists will go and tell us that it's being measured versus its gravitational pull. That at the core of the earth, there is magnitude pulling down this weight. And for the time being, this sack of rice is lighter. And eventually, once it equals 5 kilograms, it will become equal. So now, what is the standard over there on Yawm al-Qiyamah? First and foremost, I want to show you how gravity works. In Surah Al-Fatir, ayah number 10, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِلَيْهِ يَسْعَدُ كَلِمُ الطَّيِّبِ. Yas'adu means to ascend, but it's kind of like how you guys would go up a mountain. It's slow. It's like hiking up a mountain. It's not like going in an elevator where khalas, immediately went up. Think of it as stairs, not the elevator. And you have to go up 100 flights of stairs. Those of you who've been to Iraq, been to Hajj, and the elevator is taking too long, you know exactly which stairs I'm talking about, right? So those stairs would be yas'adu. وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحِ يَرْفَعُ. And the good deed will help that kalim al-tayyib, that good word, shoot upwards like the elevator. But now there's two concepts of going up. Question, kalim al-tayyib and amal al-salih. Good words, good deeds. Are these good or evil things on the scale? Good. Why are they going up? How does gravity work over here on Earth? When things are heavier, they go down. Okay, let me give you another example. Surah Al-Ahqaf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those of you who have been given ilm will be given darajat based on your ilm. What is darajat? What's the difference between darajat and darakat? Daraka is going down. Darajat is going up. So the more ilm you have, the higher you'll go. Quran seems to be consistently saying that the better you are, the higher you'll go. See, on that day, Earth is no longer the gravitational pull. It's because this is all in the core of the Earth that everything wants to be pulled down. On that day, there's a completely different standard. What's the standard? It says, وَالْوَزْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْحَقِّ. Anybody here who has heard an Arabic lecture, what sometimes does the Khatib refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Al-Haqq. The truth, the source of truth says. So the standard that day, what is the origin of all of these good deeds? The source of it all? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the better that your deed is, look, kalimat tayyib, that's good. It'll go slowly. But amal salih will shoot it up. It'll help it. It'll make it what? Heavier. The heavier things are on Yawm al-Qiyamah, the higher they'll float. Why higher? Why not going down? This is how we've been trained, right? I mean, this is how Earth has taught us. Why is it going up? Because it's getting closer and closer and closer to not Allah. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but who are his representations of haqq? Muhammad and al-Muhammad. This is exactly what we find in our hadith. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam says that there are no scales of justice. Not scales of justice, scales of deeds for the kuffar. They will just be raised, and in multitudes they are taken to hellfire. The scales are only for the Muslims. Therefore, ya Muslimin, prepare for Qiyamah and for judgment. This is the words of who? Fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn Hussein Zayn al-Abidin. Not me. Imam Sajjad. He says that there's no weighing for the kuffar, only for the Muslims. Other Imams, they will come and say, Nahnu, we are the scales of Qiyamah. Now, there's some things mentioned in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will go and say, for example, at the end of Surah Al-Kahf, لَا نُقِيمُ لَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَزْنًا. We won't even go and establish the scales for them. Who? Those people thought we're never going to come to Qiyamah. In Surah Al-Rum, those people who did shirk, we told you and the people that came before you, لَإِنْ أَشْرَكْتَ لَيَحْبَطَنَّ عَمَلُكَ. We will completely zero out the weight of your deeds. There's no weight. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to go on that day? He's going to waste time and he's going to say, let's see how much that weighs. 50,000 years, we have everybody to get through. We don't have time to go and do hypothetical exercises of let's see how much this person's nothing weighs. And let's see how much this person's nothing weighs. End of the day, it is nothing. Are we even wasting time? So God doesn't waste. The Imams go and say that we are the scales. But we already saw that it's not the scales that matter, it's that thing that you put as the standard on the other plate. This is what is actually being weighed, brothers and sisters. It's not good deeds versus bad deeds. Why? Because Surah Al-Zalzala, recite it with me, brothers and sisters. إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ أَنَا تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا شرا. As well as 2 surahs later, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ هَاوِيَةٌ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا هِيَ نَارٌ حَامِيَةٌ. Okay, question. If we're doing good versus bad, all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is whoever's scales become heavy. We think, for the bad person, oh, this side became heavy. Right, he's going to hell. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just says whoever's scale becomes heavy, they get a good life. As for the scales who are light, their deeds were useless, they go to. What did we just say from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam? That the scales are only even brought out and used for the Muslims. Meaning Muslims, you can also have light deeds. You can also have worthless deeds. What is that standard? What is وَالْوَزْنُ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْحَقِّ? What is that standard that is haqq that day? That gives your deeds weight? The Imams come and say it by themselves. We are those standards. Meaning, on that day, you will be put, and this is something that you'll have to go back to my previous lectures, that those books of deeds, Quran as well as Hadith, they show that we will be standing here again witnessing the actual deed. That deed itself is going to be put on the scale. So you praying your Maghrib prayer, that is exactly what will be put on one side of the scale. What's going to be put on the other side of the scale? This haq, this standard, the rubric that everything is being graded against? In this case, the Maghrib prayer of Sahib al-Asri was Zaman. His prayer is what your prayer will be compared. How well did you stand in prayer? Are you ghafil in your prayer? Are you rocking back and forth? Are you, checking your phone? Were you looking here and there, thinking about food, this and that? Or were you as close as possible to the Imam? And each people will be what? In Surah Al-Isra, يَوْمَ نَدْعُو كُلَّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامٍ. Call each and every single people by their Imam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will go and judge the people of Sulaiman against Sulaiman. The people of Asif bin Barkhia by Asif bin Barkhia. The people of Musa by Musa. The people of Yusha bin Nun by Yusha bin Nun. The people of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by Muhammad. The people of Ali by Ali. The people of Hassan and Hussein by the people of Hassan and Hussein. And we will be judged by the 12th. So now, if this is how tough the rubric is going to be, and by the way, in the time of ghaiba, who is the hujjah upon us? Time of ghaiba. Sahib al-Zaman says, go to Rawat Hadith. Therefore, all you have to do, you don't have to even go towards, because we don't have the Imam of our time, to show us how to correctly pray, to show us how to correctly give khums or zakat or do hajj. All we have to do is go to, for us to be mubrid lil-dhimma, go to the Risala al-Amaliyah of your knowledge. Really, it's just that simple. Go spend $10-15 on Amazon, order in your language, ask a scholar, because sometimes the English differs from the Arabic and the Farsi. Ask a scholar who is trained in the Risala, hey, what I'm doing over here, am I mubri' lil-dhimma? Is the wajibat lifted from me? Have I done it correctly? Once you know that you're doing it correctly, okay, you have qalbin salim. You have a pure heart that is at ease. Without that, like we mentioned a couple of days ago, I don't want to go and pray. I want to do backflips. I want to do jumping jacks. Okay, look, you do you. Show me it in the source. Where is it? Because these scholars, what are they doing? They're going back to our imams and our prophets. Then there is a sanad, a source. Then you can go and rest easy. Without that, you don't have any standard to give weight to your deeds. Brothers and sisters, to come back and tie up the bow very neatly and nicely from night number 1 of why do we need a religion, come now to the next series, which was Adala. Allah goes and gives you the Prophet and his family as a sunnah to go and follow. He's going to also grade you against that sunnah. How well did you follow exactly what I sent? If you didn't follow them and you started making up your own things, good luck on Yawm al-Qiyamah, because none of that matches with the standard. Here, the standard with the rice and the potatoes was that it has something in common called centrifugal force. It has this gravitational pull to the core of the earth. Over there, there's not going to be any gravitational pull towards Muhammad and al-Muhammad if there's no commonality. There's nothing that's going to be yarfa'u towards the higher stations of paradise. How do you get past level 1 of paradise, level 2, level 3, level 4? How do you get past even level 7? Because we don't believe, according to Quran, that Muhammad and al-Muhammad are going to be in the level 7 of paradise. No. They're going to be in the A'raf. They are going to be even higher than paradise. You want to be with them? Try to make your actions as close to theirs as possible. I mentioned this even in the nights after Adala, in Nubuwa, that we have such an easy system of monkey see, monkey do. That from Qa'idatul Lut, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to go and end up in Jannah. He wants to help us. So he goes and sends us people who will completely separate light from darkness. black and white, no gray area. But if you want to go and see how the spiritual, not religious trend works, or if you want to see how I'll do whatever I want, I don't want to follow a 14-year-old, you want to see how that works? Guess what? I don't know this because I listen to music. I only know this because the lyric became so popular. YOLO. You only live once. You're not going to get a second chance. So coming back to night one, why do we need religion? I want chance. We don't have time to waste. In Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, has it not become time for the believers, for them to have true of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for them to have that khashiyat bil qalb, to realize who you're working with. I'm working with. To come and try to make my deeds count. Instead of just doing whatever. Look, Surah Al-Kahf will come and say, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. Shall I tell you who are the biggest losers? Surah Al-Kahf will come and say, want me to tell you who the biggest losers on Qiyamah are? It's those people who thought this whole time they were doing good deeds, but they were being deluded. Don't let this be us, brothers and sisters. We have 14 people, we have 124,000 people, plus 12 more, plus Fatima Zahra, such as the likes of which humanity has never seen. And this will bring in those other 2 nights of Imamah. Now that we're convinced, the last night, that there is a Qiyamah, there is a hereafter, we have to work towards it. Brothers and sisters, what are we doing? This is just as much, there's one finger pointing towards you, there are 3 pointing back towards me. Am I ready to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is why our scholars, even if they know they don't have any salah to make up, any fast to make up, they say, well, if there's anything left to go into, right? If there's anything that I maybe might have missed, I'll go and just pray a fajr, pray a dhuhr, pray a mass. Right? MashaAllah, some of us, we have prayers, not even just a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, years. Maybe some of us have decades. And we know that we might have done something wrong. Maybe it was the reason why we left religion. But at the end of the day, we're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day anyway. We're going to have to answer. So at least be on that pathway of trying to make up your past salahs, because Allah takes that into it. Even if you were just trying, you didn't fully make it up, Allah says, that's enough for me. This is why the Imams come and say, woe to those whose ones outweigh their tens. What does this mean? You could have tens of good deeds. Even for your niyyah, you wanted to go and do something, Allah gives you a good deed. But that one bad sin outweighs even this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made good deeds, getting into Jannah, so easy. We were just discussing one day, yesterday, one of the brothers over here, he has 3 daughters. And we were joking, wajabat alayhi Jannah. He has Jannah now because he has 3 daughters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is willing to go and give out paradise for free. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is willing to go and grade on a, in college, we pray when finals come. Ya Allah, please let Professor X or Y grade on a curve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grades on a curve. He says that we will go and grade you based on the best of your a'mal. So the best form of your Maghrib namaz today maybe is going to be counted. The best of your recitations of your Maghrib will be counted into that salah. That will be compared against Sahib al-Zaman. The best of the wudus will be compared. It will be also brought in. Not the worst. Everything will be built up. And this, brothers and sisters, is why we have repetition. Those of us who go to Hajj multiple times, those of us who go to Ziyarah multiple times, and everybody, hopefully, is praying every day, right? Why? So that I can have multiple prayers up there on that scale. Just one. If all that's going to be put together is maybe half of a namaz, half of one namaz, not even a full fajr, a full dhuhr, a full asr, a full maghrib, a full isha. a full Fajr. And that's all I have from all of my salawat to compare to Sahib Zaman. And who's a bigger loser than me? That's why you need attentiveness. That's why you need, our kids ask us, why do I have to keep on doing this again? You keep on getting better. So you train yourself. So you have more. Brothers and sisters, this is exactly what al-Baneen taught her sons, Abbas, Abdullah, and Uthman, and Ja'far. For years and years, Imam Ali alayhi salam didn't have a wife after Fatima Zahra. And eventually he goes to Aqil. And he says, brother, I need a wife. He goes to Bani Kilab and he asks the father for the permission, and the father accepts. And Fatima comes to the house of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Her name is actually Fatima. When she comes, Imam Ali alayhi salam on the first night, he goes and calls her by her name, Ya Fatima. She says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, can I ask for something as a wedding present? He says, what is it? He says, she says, from now on, please don't call me Fatima. He says, but it's your name. She says, yes, but I don't want to see the sadness in the eyes of Hassan and Hussein and Zainab and Kulthum. Because when they heard their mother's name, there was such a sadness. As soon as they heard the name of Lady Zahra, that they started to get tears in their eyes. And I don't want to ever be a source of pain for my masters. She called them Sadati. It's this same level of devotion and dedication and practice in the life of Fatima al-Baneen. Remember what I said a couple of nights ago. You start off with one bad deed, it eventually snowballs, and now it becomes concrete, it becomes your disposition. And now on the 10th of Muḥarram, you need a jackhammer. Even the most eloquent, beautiful of speeches of Imam Hussein, some people it doesn't work on. Some it does, it does. Umar ibn Sa'ad, tears start coming, but it's not enough. Others, like Shimr, completely. But when you go and train in your households, the likes of Abbas, then when Abbas is born into the household of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he comes and he unswaddles his blanket and he kisses his left and his right arms. al-Baneen asks him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, is there something wrong with the arms of my Abbas? No, Ya al-Baneen, there's nothing wrong with his arms, but I'm giving these kisses as salams to these arms because one day he will sacrifice his left arm and his right arm for my son Hussein. One day he will not have these left and right arms anymore. So on that day when Abul Fadl Abbas comes and he gives his arms as sacrifices bravely, valiantly, he is able to defend his imam, and he comes even then with his teeth, he tries to bring the water. Such that even after Kufa and Sham, when Imam Zain al-Abidin is about to enter Mecca, on the outskirts of Mecca, he meets a poet by the name of Bishr. He says, Bishr, your father used to be a poet. Are you also skilled, and is your profession also poetry? He says, yes, Ya Ibn Rasulullah. He says, then I want you to go into Medina and I want you to create an atmosphere of sadness, and I want you to make the people cry. This is how I want to enter Medina. Tell them that Hussein was killed on the plains of Karbala. Tell them that the heads were put on spears and paraded throughout the cities. Tell them that we were made prisoners and we were made to be humiliated throughout the Muslim lands. Bishr goes, and as he's thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? He realizes that there's an ayah of the Quran he can use from Surah Al-Ahzab. It says, Ya ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum. Oh, people of Yathrib, get up and get out of your cities. People are now coming to their windows. They're coming out of their doors. Bishr, what is it? What's wrong? He says, the news will be delivered at the grave of Rasulullah. So everybody comes to that central point in Medina, to the grave of Rasulullah. Once everybody is there, he goes and gives the news. عَظَّمَ اللَّهُ أُجُورَكُمْ بِمُصَابِنَا بِاسْتِشْهَادِ أَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ الْحُسَيْنِ. From the distance, he sees an old woman coming with a child on her chest. The bishop starts asking, who is this lady who is completely covered, who has her full hijab? Who is such an honorable lady? They say to him, Bishop, be very careful. This is Bin. Why didn't he know that this is Because Banin follows the teachings of Rasulullah and Imam Ali, and she stays, she stays within the house. But she hears that there is news of Imam Hussein. So she wants to hear what the news is. It's not going to become delivered at her house. It has to be at Rasulullah's grave. So she comes and she has this child, and Bishop is warned, be very careful how you deliver the news to this woman, because this woman is Banin. He says the Banin al-Arba'a, the mother of the four sons, Abbas and Uthman and Abdullah and Ja'far. They say yes. He says, okay, how am I going to break the news? When she comes, he says, Azzamallah lakal Hajj. For your youngest son was killed in Karbala, Uthman. She says, I want to know the news of my son Hussein. He's my son, not the rest. The rest, yes, they're my biological sons, but may they all be sacrificed for Hussein. He says, Azzamallah lakal Hajj. For Ja'far, he was also killed in Karbala. She says, Bishop, what are you doing? I want to know about my son Hussein. He says, even Abdullah, the third oldest, he was also killed. She says, may they all be sacrificed for Hussein. Now he's going to narrate that line that makes her fall. Says, Azzamallah lakal Hajj. بِمُصَابِنَا بِالْعَبَّاسِ. Even Abbas also fell that day in Karbala. She says, how did Abbas die? He says, I don't have the strength to narrate. Imam Zain al-Abidin didn't tell me. She says, but what happened to Hussein? He says to everybody, عَظَّمَ اللَّهُ لَكَ الْأَجْرَ يَا شِيعَةَ Hussein. قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنِ بِأَرْضِ كَرْبَلَا. And he died thirsty, alone. He died wahidan, atshan, and ghurban. Banin now comes to Medina, and she comes to the house of Zainab. She said, Fidda comes and says, my master Zainab, someone's at the door. It is Banin. Can she come in? And they cry about Abbas, and they cry about Imam Hussein. Banin asks one question, was there any shortcoming? I gave him instructions to protect you. No, ya Banin, he did everything correctly. If he had his left arm, if he had his right arm, I would never have become a prisoner to Banu Umayyah. لا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. مأتم حسين يا حسين.